I never thought I'd be one of those people calling a police non-emergency line over a feeling, but I guess that's how these stories always start. The house on the corner. I've lived in this apartment for 3 years. It's a quiet, suburban complex, the kind of place where people keep to themselves, and the biggest drama is usually someone leaving their trash valet out on the wrong day. My routine was solid. I work a 9 to 5, I'm home by 5:45, and I usually spend my evenings at my desk with my headphones on. It started on a Tuesday in November. It was already dark by the time I got home. As I was walking from my car to my front door, I noticed a silver sedan parked across the street. It wasn't a car I recognized from the complex, but that's not unusual. People have guests. But what caught my eye was that the engine was off, the lights were out, and someone was just sitting there. I couldn't see their face, just the silhouette of a head and shoulders. I didn't think much of it. Maybe they were finishing a phone call or waiting for a friend. I went inside, locked my door, and forgot about it. About 3 days later, I was taking the trash out around 10 p.m. The silver sedan was there again, same spot. This time, I deliberately looked at it as I walked by. The windows were tinted, but the driver's side window was cracked just an inch. As I passed, I heard a sound. It wasn't music or a podcast. It was a clicking noise. Click, click, click. It sounded exactly like a mechanical tally counter. I felt a chill, but I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe they were a private investigator or something. I went back inside, but for the first time, I made sure my deadbolt was turned and I checked the window locks in the living room. That night, I had a hard time sleeping. Around 3 a.m., I got up to get a glass of water. My kitchen window faces the street. I didn't turn on the light, I just peered through the blinds. The car was gone, but there was something else. A small white object was sitting on my doorstep. I didn't open the door. I just watched it through the peephole until the sun came up. When I finally went out to get it, it was a Polaroid. A picture of my front door, taken from the street, but it wasn't taken during the day. It was taken at night. In the corner of the frame, you could see the edge of my living room curtains, the ones I'd left slightly open that evening. I called the police. An officer came out, looked at the photo, and basically told me there wasn't much he could do. "It's creepy, I'll give you that," he said, handing the photo back. "But technically, taking a picture of a house from a public street isn't a crime. Just keep your doors locked and call us if you see someone actually on your property." I felt dismissed. I started staying at my girlfriend's place for a few days, but I couldn't stay away forever. I have a job, I have bills. I eventually went back. When I walked into my apartment after 3 days away, everything looked normal. The air felt a bit stale, but nothing was missing. I went to my bedroom to drop my bag, and that's when I saw it. On my bedside table, right next to my lamp, was a small silver tally counter, the kind you use to count people entering a building. I picked it up with shaking hands. The number on the display was 412. I didn't call the police this time. I ran out of the house, got in my car, and drove to a gas station a mile away. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I'd pass out. How did they get in? There were no signs of forced entry. I checked my keys. They were all there. I spent the next hour in my car trying to breathe. I decided I had to go back and get my laptop and some clothes so I could leave for good. I convinced myself I'd just been sloppy. Maybe I'd left a window unlocked before I left for my girlfriend's. I got back to the apartment at 11:30 p.m. I left the car running in the driveway. I ran inside, grabbed my laptop bag, and headed for the closet to grab my coat. As I reached for my jacket, I heard it. A muffled, rhythmic sound coming from behind the drywall of the closet. Click, click, click. It sounded from inside the wall. I looked up.
In the ceiling of my closet, there's a small crawlspace access panel, one of those square pieces of plywood you just push up. It was shifted just a half-inch, and in that gap, I saw a sliver of a face. Not a whole face, just a single unblinking eye and the tip of a mechanical counter held up by a pale finger. I didn't scream. I just turned and bolted. I didn't even close the front door. I drove straight to the police station and stayed there until they sent a unit to the apartment. When they got there, the crawlspace was empty. They found a sleeping bag, several empty water bottles, and a stack of Polaroids. Dozens of them. They weren't just of my door. They were of me, sleeping, me eating dinner, me sitting at my desk with my headphones on. The most disturbing part wasn't the photos, though. They were the logs. The police found a notebook where the person had tracked my movements for months. They had figured out that when I wore my noise-canceling headphones at my desk, I couldn't hear the crawlspace panel opening. They had been coming down into my apartment almost every night while I was sitting just 10 feet away. The tally counter? It wasn't counting days. The police figured it out after looking at the notebook entries. Each click represented a near miss. Every time I had almost looked up, almost turned around, or almost walked into the room while they were out of the ceiling, they clicked the counter. They never caught the guy. The silver sedan was found abandoned in a grocery store parking lot 3 towns over. It had been reported stolen weeks prior. I moved out the next day. I live in a high-rise now on the 12th floor. There are no crawl spaces here, no attics. But sometimes, when it's late and I'm sitting at my computer, I'll take my headphones off. I'll sit in the absolute silence of my living room, straining to hear anything. And every once in a while, I could swear I hear a faint, metallic click coming from the vent above my head.
I haven't told anyone about this because, honestly, it makes me sound like I'm losing it. But I can't stop thinking about the timeline of that night. I've gone over it 1,000 times and it just doesn't add up. This happened last Tuesday. I work as a freelance graphic designer, which basically means I spend a lot of time in coffee shops trying to look busy so I don't feel like a hermit. There's this place called The Grind on the edge of the industrial district. It's perfect because it's huge, quiet, and stays open until 11 p.m. I arrived around 7:30 p.m. I remember the time specifically because I had just missed the happy hour discount on muffins. I took my usual spot, a corner booth in the back, tucked behind a massive monstera plant that needs watering. The vibe was totally normal. A couple of college kids were studying near the window, and a guy in a suit was typing aggressively on a MacBook. I put on my noise-canceling headphones, put on a lo-fi playlist, and got to work on a logo revision. You know that feeling when you're in the zone? I didn't look up for a long time. I was just clicking away, moving anchor points. At some point, I realized the music had stopped. My phone had died. I reached into my bag for my charger, and that's when I noticed how quiet it was. Not late night quiet, but empty quiet. I checked the wall clock, 10:15 p.m. The college kids were gone. The suit guy was gone. The barista, a girl with neon green hair named Sophie, wasn't behind the counter. I figured she was in the back doing dishes or taking out the trash. I plugged my phone in, waited for it to buzz to life, and decided to pack up early. As I was zipping my laptop sleeve, I saw a movement in the reflection of the darkened window next to me. There was a man sitting 3 tables away. He hadn't been there when I arrived. He was wearing a beige windbreaker, the kind of nondescript thing an old man wears to a hardware store. He didn't have a coffee. He didn't have a book. He was just sitting perfectly still, facing my direction. I gave him that awkward white person smile, the tight-lipped nod we do when we're uncomfortable, and started heading for the door. "Hey," he said. His voice was thin. It sounded like paper rubbing together. I stopped, one hand on the strap of my bag. "Yeah?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "You dropped your receipt," he said. He pointed to the floor near my booth. I looked down. There was a crumpled slip of thermal paper. I didn't remember getting one, but I'm a hoarder of scraps, so I walked back, picked it up, and shoved it in my pocket. "Thanks, man. Have a good one." He didn't respond. He just watched me walk out the door. The air outside was freezing. I walked to my car, which was the only one left in the small side lot. As I sat in the driver's seat, I felt a weird prickle on my neck. I looked back at the shop window. The man in the beige windbreaker was standing right against the glass. He wasn't waving. He was just pressed there, forehead against the pane, watching me. I noped out of there. I drove home, locked the door, threw my keys on the counter, and tried to shake it off. Just a weirdo in a coffee shop, right? About an hour later, I was emptying my pockets before throwing my jeans in the wash. I pulled out the receipt the man had pointed out. I smoothed it out on the table. It wasn't a receipt for coffee. It was a printout from a Kroger, the nearby Kroger in my apartment, about 6 miles from the coffee shop. I looked at the timestamp at the top. Tuesday, 8:48 p.m. My heart did a slow, heavy thud in my chest. At 8:48 p.m., I was at the coffee shop. I hadn't left my booth. I hadn't gone to Kroger. I looked at the items listed on the receipt. 1 times gallon distilled water. 1 times heavy-duty trash bags, 30 count. 1 times duct tape, silver. 1 times box of latex gloves, large. I felt sick. My brain tried to rationalize it. He just pointed to a random receipt on the floor. It wasn't mine. He was just being weird. But then I looked at the bottom of the slip. You know how those receipts usually have a member ID or a truncated credit card number? Under the total, it said customer ID number 78459921AX, registered account holder. My name, my middle initial, my rewards account number. I sat there in my kitchen, the silence of my apartment feeling heavy, like it was pressing against my ears. I pulled up my banking app on my phone, hands shaking so hard I mistyped my passcode twice. I scrolled through my recent transactions. 7:34 p.m., The Grind, coffee, $5.75. 8:48 p.m., Kroger Store 442, $34.12. I hadn't left the shop. I was in the zone. I was clicking anchor points. I was listening to music. I remember Sophie, the barista, walking past me around 8:45 with a tray of mugs. I remember it. I went to my front door and checked the deadbolt. It was locked. Then I saw it. On the small entryway table right next to where I always drop my keys was a plastic Kroger bag. Inside was a gallon of distilled water, a box of trash bags, tape, and gloves. I haven't slept since. I keep thinking about the man in the beige windbreaker. I keep thinking about how he knew to point at that receipt. Because if I was at the coffee shop from 7:30 to 10:15, who was at the grocery store at 8:48 using my card? And more importantly, how did they get into my apartment to drop off the bags while I was still out? I'm sitting in my living room right now. It's 3 a.m. I just heard the distinct metallic click of a car door closing in the parking lot outside my window. I don't want to look out. I really don't want to see a beige windbreaker.
I haven't used public buses at night since this happened. I still tell myself I'm overreacting, but there's one small detail I can't explain, and it keeps coming back to me at the worst times. This was about 4 months ago, a Tuesday. I remember because I had a late lab session at school that ran longer than expected. By the time I left, it was already past 9:30 p.m. Normally, I'd take a ride-hailing app, but my phone battery was at 6% and the network was acting up.
so I decided to just take a bus home. The bus stop was one of those half-lit ones by the roadside with a flickering street light that made everything look slightly off, like a bad video filter. There were a few other people waiting, nothing unusual. A woman scrolling on her phone, a guy with headphones, and an older man sitting on the metal bench. What I remember first is how quiet it was. Not peaceful quiet, more like everyone was deliberately avoiding eye contact. Even when a car passed, nobody reacted. It felt like we were all pretending the others weren't there. The bus arrived around 9:50 p.m. It wasn't full, which was a relief. I got in, paid, and moved toward the back. The inside lights were dim, kind of yellowish, and the air smelled faintly like fuel and something damp. There were maybe 8 or 9 people total. I picked a seat near the window, second to last row. Across the aisle from me was a guy wearing a dark hoodie, head slightly down, hands in his pockets. He didn't look suspicious, just tired. The bus started moving, and for the first 10 minutes, everything was normal. People getting off at stops, new ones getting on, the usual. Then, at some point, I noticed something small. Every time the bus stopped and the doors opened, the guy across from me would look up, not at the door, not at the people getting in, but directly at me. The first time I thought it was a coincidence. The second time I started paying attention. Same thing. Doors open, he lifts his head, eyes straight on me. No expression, just staring. Then, as soon as the bus starts moving again, he looks down like nothing happened. I tried to ignore it. I even switched my gaze to my phone, even though it was almost dead. But I could feel it, that awareness when someone is looking at you. By the third stop, I decided to move seats. I got up casually and went a few rows forward, sitting behind a woman who had a big shopping bag. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe I was just tired and overthinking. The bus stopped again. I didn't want to look back, but I did. He was still there, and when the doors opened, he leaned slightly into the aisle, just enough to see past the seats, and again, he looked straight at me. Not scanning, not curious, like he was checking if I was still there. That's when I felt it shift from weird to something's wrong. I remember thinking, okay, maybe he's just mentally off or something. Just get off early and walk the rest. So I pulled the bell for the next stop, even though it wasn't mine. The bus slowed down, stopped, doors opened. I got off quickly and didn't look back immediately. I just started walking. The road was quieter here, fewer streetlights, but I knew the area well enough. After maybe 10 seconds, I turned around. The bus was still there, and the guy was standing at the door. Not stepping off, just standing there, holding the pole, looking directly at me. Then the doors closed and the bus drove off. I remember laughing nervously at that point, like, okay, that was creepy, but it's over now. I kept walking. About 2 minutes later, I heard another bus approaching from behind me. I didn't think much of it first, just stepped a bit closer to the side of the road. But as it passed me, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. It was the same bus. Same number, same slightly cracked rear light, same dent near the side panel. That didn't make sense because the route doesn't loop back like that, not that fast. As it passed, I glanced at the windows. Most of the seats looked empty now, except near the back. I caught a glimpse of someone standing in the aisle, facing the window, facing me. I couldn't see his face clearly this time, just the outline of the hoodie and the way he stood, too still, like he wasn't holding on to anything, even though the bus was moving. The bus sped up again and disappeared ahead. I stood there for a few seconds, trying to process it. Maybe it was a different bus, same model, same damage. It happens, right? I kept walking, but faster now. The next thing is what really got to me. I reached the junction that leads to my street, and there's a small kiosk there that usually stays open late. The woman who runs it knows me. We've talked a few times. She was there that night, arranging drinks in a cooler. I went up to buy water, mostly just to feel normal again. She looked at me kind of strangely and said, "You missed your stop." I paused. "What do you mean?" She nodded behind me, down the road I just came from. "That bus dropped you before your usual place." I didn't respond immediately. Then she added, "The same bus passed here twice. I thought you were inside the second time." I felt this cold feeling in my chest. "Twice?" I asked. She nodded. "Yes, first time, normal. Second time, it was almost empty." I didn't tell her anything else. I just paid, took the water, and walked home as fast as I could. I didn't sleep much that night. The next day, I tried to convince myself it was just a coincidence. Maybe there were two similar buses. Maybe I was tired and imagined the timing wrong. But there's one thing I can't explain. When I got home, I checked my phone before it died completely. There was a notification I hadn't seen before. A missed call. No number, just unknown. Time was 9:52 p.m. That was exactly when I first noticed him looking at me. And I know this sounds small, but I don't remember my phone ringing at all, not even on silent. It's been months now. I still take buses during the day sometimes, but never at night. And every now and then, when I'm waiting at a stop, I'll see a bus with a cracked rear light slow down slightly as it passes. Not stopping, just slowing, like it's checking.